So, Whitney Webb, who's sort of she's the Sydney Sweeney of this space,
Yeah.
she's the trendsetter, in the online
And
online
ironically,
politics
Sydney
world.
Sweeney was in Madam Web.
Yeah, there, there you go. Yes. So Whitney Webb recently sat down with Brianna Joy Gray on the Bad Faith podcast and made this provocative statement. But the more you think about it, the truer it is, and the scarier it is. Palantir is the new Jeffrey Epstein. So let's see what she means by that.
And to bring it back to a question you asked earlier on about, Israel and blackmail, they don't really need blackmail anymore. And I argue at the end of my book that Palantir, Peter Thiel's company, really makes it so that, that's the new Jeffrey Epstein at the end of the day. If they want to blackmail you or know something about you, they just access what Palantir sucked up about you and your search history, your communications, your finances, tweets you've liked in the past, all sorts of things. You don't really need Epstein in the surveillance era.
Do you think when they said tweets are private, it was just an inducement to get us all to like what we really want to like so they can hold it against us later?
It's possible if they want to hold it against you later.
It's an interesting question by Brianna. So it used to be that, you could see who liked whatever tweet you wanted.
Yeah.
The likes were public. Now you
Yeah.
can't see that anymore. You could see who retweeted a tweet, but you can't check on who liked it. That's now private. And so what Brianna's asking, and this is kind of a common thing, and Whitney's talked about this too, about how a lot of this tech is a trap, right? They're giving you the illusion that you have the freedom to express yourself. Meanwhile, they're compiling data on all this shit. And so using people with video cameras to blackmail people, that's kind of quaint, right? That's of the past. Now we don't need to fly out to an island now. We'll just see what you're doing online. See what you're doing online. We'll contract that out to this for-profit tech company, and boom, everybody has their own digital Jeffrey Epstein crawling around their laptop and their smartphone. That's it.
Yeah. AI is even taking the blackmailer jobs.
Exactly. It's, right. It's even taking blackmailers' jobs. Exactly.
The disturbing thing about Palantir is that it's really about pre-crime. They were the pioneers of predictive policing. They were originally, almost everywhere they piloted predictive policing had been low-income minority neighborhoods, where they decide who's going to commit a crime before they commit it. And that's essentially what the... we'll see. Administrative detention, maybe, if we go the Israeli path. But Trump actually in his first...
You see Brianna's getting a little freaked out there. See the look on her face. She's like, oh boy. Scary stuff. You're always in for a ride when you got Whitney Webb on the show. Down the rabbit holes.
But Trump actually in his first term posited this program to stop mass shootings before they happen, that would basically involve going over American social media posts and identifying if they had early warning signs of neuropsychiatric illness based on their, tweets or Facebook posts. And if they were determined by the algorithm to show those warning signs, they could be, placed under house arrest or go to sessions with a court-ordered psychologist and all sorts of things.
Well, some of my extended relatives better be careful because they got some wild Facebook posts.
There you go. Little comic relief there. All right, so just to flesh out what Whitney is talking about here, this was an article that was mentioned in a Wired write-up in 2018. This is November of 2002, just a year after 9/11. An op-ed in the New York Times. If the Homeland Security Act is not amended before passage, here's what will happen to you. Every purchase you make with a credit card, every magazine subscription you buy and medical prescription you fill, every website you visit and email you send or receive, every academic grade you receive, every bank deposit you make, every trip you book and every event you attend, all these transactions and communications will go into what the Defense Department describes as a virtual centralized grand database. To this computerized dossier in your private life from commercial sources, add every piece of information that government has about you. passport application, driver's license and bridge toll records, judicial and divorce records, complaints from nosy neighbors to the FBI, your lifetime paper trail plus the latest hidden camera surveillance, and you have the Super Snoop's dream, a total information awareness, quote unquote, about every U.S. citizen. This is not some far-out Orwellian scenario. It is what will happen to your personal freedom in the next few weeks if John Poindexter, remember that name, gets the unprecedented power he seeks. Now, total information awareness was actually defunded by Congress in 2003. And that, coincidentally, of course, is the same year that Palantir was founded. So the same year that this effort was kind of shuttered within the official jurisdiction of the federal government, you have this organization, or this company, rather, called Palantir, springs into being. And so in 2018, this article came out in Wired, said how the tech giants created what DARPA couldn't. The William Safire column, You Are a Suspect, was published in the Times in 2002, 2 years before Facebook was created. And Safire isn't talking about social networks or digital advertising. He's discussing total information awareness, a U.S. Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, program that proposed mining vast amounts of Americans' data to identify potential national security threats. The virtual grand database was to belong to the Department of Defense, which would use it to identify behavior patterns that would help to predict emerging terrorist threats, pre-crime, right? Today, we're voluntarily participating in the dystopian scenario Safire envisioned 16 years ago. Again, this was from 2018, with each bit of data handed to companies like Facebook and Google. But in this system, private companies are our information repositories, leaving us to reckon with the consequences of a world that endows corporations with the kind of data once deemed too outrageous for the government. The Total Information Awareness Project, run by Admiral John Poindexter, was a meta program. It was designed to aggregate signals generated via other programs run out of DARPA's Information Awareness Office. So, fast forward to today, to Palantir, what Whitney Webb was talking about. And by today, I mean like a couple days ago, whenever this was announced, yesterday, Palantir smashes expectations with $1 billion second quarter revenue, as CEO boasts that skeptics have been bent into a kind of submission. So what that Wired article was talking about is how these big tech companies were able to aggregate data that the federal government couldn't get away with because there would be all these constitutional concerns. Now, in 2018, all that information was sort of siloed depending on who you submitted it to, right? If you gave it to Google or YouTube, or if you gave it to Facebook, or you gave it to X, or whatever. What Palantir has been tasked with doing is consolidating all that into a master database. Who are they contracted by? The government to do that. So this is basically just a privatization of the Total Information Awareness Project. It's really not different in any kind, except that it is technically being done in the private sector to avoid these constitutional concerns. And boy, they are getting paid like they are in the private sector. $1 billion in revenue for the last quarter alone. Palantir's earnings were buoyed by its U.S. revenue, which surged 55% from the same period last year. Alex Karp called the earnings bombastic, saying skeptics have been bent into a kind of submission. Palantir was awarded a 10-year, $10 billion enterprise agreement with the Army in late July. And you could see videos of his earnings calls here. The quote, "This is the perfect time for a revolution in the USA. I run around telling corporate leaders, if you want to have your First Amendment rights to an opinion, again, get our unit economics, and then you too can say things that are true in public like we do." And in addition to that earnings call, he obviously publishes open letter to his shareholders where he writes, "The reasons for our increasingly precipitous rise are many, but principal among them is our willingness to foster an unapologetically specific culture within this artist colony of a company, to allow for plenty of friction and disagreement across a range of domains, yet remain unwaveringly committed to a set of values and an approach to building. Tell me Elon couldn't have written that letter. I mean, these people, they're all the same. They're all the same whack jobs with these, delusions of grandeur about their place in the universe and in the human experiment. It is this culture that gave rise to the ontology, forward-deployed engineers, Foundry, and Maven smart systems, all of which have already changed the course of human history. Terms and titles that we casually coined decades ago are now widespread. Some have even been adopted by companies which seek to mimic our impact in a sense. Similarly, in the United States, the most consequential country in the West, it is the culture that enables companies like ours to come into existence and excel. It must be protected. He talks all the time about Western culture and Western values. We've done segments about their aiding, the Israeli military in Gaza, thinking of Israel as this great bulwark of Western values in the Eastern world. The United States is not and should not be permitted to become a soft compromise and amalgam of global values and tastes. Yes, that's right.
Wow.
Now, you could have seen this coming before Trump took office. So here is, at the time, future Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. This was January of 2025. Saying DHS needs to work more closely with the CIA to identify how U.S. citizens are becoming radicalized.
Is the cybersecurity and intelligence elements that we have within the Department of Homeland Security have been incredibly siloed. They have not communicated with other intelligence agencies like they should and partnered. INA has some interaction, but not enough. And we also need to have CISA have interaction with the FBI, CIA to make sure they're working together to stop these types of threats and identify when they're growing among our citizens and how they become radicalized.
And as you notice, Whitney there quote tweets this, and the path to them doing this is through Palantir. So this was back in January. So she saw this coming. And yeah, the earnings reports, these were graphics that were included in Alex Karp's letter to his shareholders. Just look at the growth year over year, quarter 2, 2025 to quarter 2, 2024. You're talking about a 40 some odd % increase from 67 billion or 678 million to $1 billion in revenue. Quarterly revenue growth, 48%. That's the exact number. Sorry, I forgot I included that one. Commercial revenue growth up 93% over the quarter 2 growth, the growth rate. So, yeah, everything she said would happen is happening. She called it exactly right, and it's happening at breakneck speed. Alex Karp often cites this, I forget what he calls it, the rule of 40. Generally, you say healthy growth for a company is between 15% and 45%. In the tech world, don't forget, the ethos there is move fast, break things. So they have this unofficial, rule of 40, meaning you want to grow by 40% year over year over year. Well, year over year, they're at 93. They've almost doubled their revenue. And this is 6 months or 7 months in to Trump's second term. And they're already doing this at a speed that is very alarming, very alarming. And so, yeah, that reinforces her point. Who needs Jeffrey Epstein? Who needs islands? Who needs pilots?
Right.
Who needs freak off parties? When you got everything, you got shit on everybody, whoever you want, all in one place at one time. Pretty scary stuff, but I think that is a good way of thinking about it. When they gather this information, all of a sudden they've got blackmail on everybody. They have dirt on everybody now. And we signed up for it by what? By deferring to the private sector, right? Because this, even after 9/11, when people were very deferential to the government, even after 9/11, if you were alive at the time or you were old enough to live through that, you remember how crazy it was, how people were just so willing to trust the government. Even then, they couldn't get the total information awareness off the ground. And so what did they do? They created this company with Peter Thiel, with Alex Karp, and that essentially became a sort of, privatized CIA shop. And now they can perform these duties free of the kind of scrutiny that they would have to endure were they to be officially part of the United States government. It's pretty scary shit. It really is.
Yeah, what you are seeing, as Yanis Varoufakis wrote about, is a new techno-feudalism. And just as the old aristocracy controlled the land that people were dependent on, they're going to control the digital world. And along with it, they're going to control all production and employment. Employment for you is the getting the plot of land, right? They're going to be able to control who works, and they're going to be able to control who gets to live within the society, just like a feudal lord, right? They'll be able to cast you out with whatever information they want to release on you, whatever blacklisting they want to do. It was very interesting that he talks about how a company like this wouldn't be possible in any other country. Yeah, because they would tax you,
Right.
so you don't get this big. They wouldn't allow you to exploit people in the way that your company does. And you would be regulated in ways that you're not in this country. They're aristocrats. That's how they envision the world, and this idea of Western values. I mean, this goes all the way back to this is for people who get their understanding from history from the 300. That's who
The
this
graphic
speaks
novel?
to.
Yeah.
Movie. The movie.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I mean, more people have seen the movie.
Yeah.
And not surprisingly, Frank Miller, who's a major, post 9/11 David Mamet nutball, right winger, the comic, meaning the comic. The Greeks, going back to Herodotus, defined themselves as the free people versus the decadent, tyrannical Persians. But those Spartans who held that pass, the reason they were so good at warfare is because they were entirely dependent on a helot population, as they called them, that provided all their needs. For Walking Dead fans, they were the real life saviors, where you had this very small minority that was completely oppressing 90% of the population and forcing them to provide for all their needs. If you're going to do that, they would have periodic uprisings of the helots who were kept hungry. You could get beaten by other Spartans if your helots started to get too fat. You were treating them too well. Those are the people who, in Western mythology, represent the freedom of the West against the oppressive tyranny of the East. That's very much the vocabulary that people like Elon, people like Karp speak in, or people like Thiel, as we saw in his now infamous Antichrist video. Do they know better? No, I don't think so. Like, when you dig down, these people are pretty fucking stupid in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But in ways that make you a lot of money in this particular society. In some cases, they're smart about the technology. In some cases, they're just smart about manipulating the system. Elon didn't invent shit. He was very good at manipulating the system to enrich himself. He didn't invent anything. He's not an inventor. This guy's got a BA. He's not an engineer. He didn't invent these things. But he manipulated the system to give him a lot of subsidies, a lot of grants. He embedded himself into the security state, very much like Palantir did, and made themselves indispensable. To the point that Elon was able to tell a famously thin-skinned president basically to go fuck himself and then get another contract afterwards.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And when you talk about, okay, who did the deep state favor in 2024? Not that they couldn't have dealt with Kamala, obviously. Kamala's no threat to them. But really, who could have, who's more perfect to implement this than this incurious, lazy fuck who has authoritarian
Oh, yeah.
tendencies. So
Yeah.
yeah, all right, yeah, go ahead, do it. I mean,
Right.
that's why Elon joined
Sure.
the campaign.
Please clap.